Hi, welcome to the City of Tucson public meeting. This is a virtual meeting. This meeting is going to cover a summary of the City of Tucson proposed changes and updates. My name is Elizabeth Leibold, and I am the City of Tucson Community Rating System Coordinator for the city, and I work in Floodplain Administration for the City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility. I'd like to introduce our presenters tonight. We have Fred Felix, Floodplain Administrator, John Vanwinkle, Department of Transportation and Mobility Engineering Management. We also have Peter McLaughlin, who's a lead planner with Planning and Development Services Department, and Craig Saltzman is with the Department of Transportation Engineering and Floodplain Administration. And we also have Patrick Hartley, also in transportation, and he is the Transportation Program Coordinator. Before we begin the presentations, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. If you are calling in, we're asking that you stay muted and for the entire meeting. You will not be able to ask questions over the phone, but you can text your questions to 520-338-8515. That is 520-338-8515. For those joining virtually, you can ask questions in the chat box to the right. You will have a question. We will have a question and answer session after all the presentations have been completed. This video also is being recorded and will be posted for later review, and for those who will not be able to participate tonight. The agenda for this session, this public virtual meeting is in front of you. I hope you see the screen. It's a PowerPoint presentation with the agenda, and we'll have 4 presentations. One will be covering the regulatory updates to code. The other one, the next one will be the Tucson Floodplain Management Plan update. And the third one's actually going to be the City of Tucson Levy Maintenance Manual. And then we'll move Tucson in that order. And then we'll go to questions and answers at the end of the session. I'd like to introduce Fred Felix. Fred, would you like to begin?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking time out this evening to be with us. We wanted to bring you some information that we hope will be helpful to you. My name is Fred Felix. I'm the city engineer for the City of Tucson. I'm also the floodplain administrator, and it's all drainage planning, design, construction, and maintenance of urban drainage within our community goes to the Department of Transportation and Mobility. We partner with the Pima County Flood Control District to develop regional projects that will help reduce stormwater discharge to streets and washes. Some people say we live in a desert. Why should we even worry about that? But if you've been around here long enough, you know that when it rains, it pours. And there's an old saying that if you don't like the weather, all you have to do is drive a couple of blocks. That's very unique to the desert. Our streets do get flooded. We don't have a whole lot of infrastructure, so we do rely on streets to carry drainage, and it's something that we try to control. We report to the mayor and city council as they are the floodplain board. They approve all changes and regulations that affect our community and quality of life. But the regulations that we adopt have been established by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. You know them as FEMA. The City of Tucson has been part of the floodplain insurance program since the early 1980s, and it makes it possible for the federal government to provide disaster assistance to our residents. The community rating system, which is important to our community, allows us, our community, to purchase flood insurance for those areas, those properties that are flood prone. And if you have a federally backed mortgage, you probably would be required to have flood insurance as part of your mortgage. And it could, so it's important to us that we provide you the very best rate. And so a lot of the regulations and a number of things that we're going to talk about tonight really are part of that, so that we can maintain our rating and keep your insurance rates down. So we are proposing some clarifications to our floodplain ordinance as part of our floodplain management plan. And you'll hear more about that. But to describe some of the things that that will be changing or being clarified, I'd like to introduce John Vanwinkle to you. John?
Thank you, Fred. Hi, everybody. My name is John Vanwinkle. I work for the Department of Transportation as engineering manager. I'll go through the proposed updates to the Tucson City Code, which is our floodplain ordinance, chapter 26. And then we can go through the Q&A if there are any questions on the clarifications. Most of the changes are clarifications or updates to the code that are a long time coming. There are a couple changes that are directly related to our community rating system, making sure that we have updates to our minimum mandatory language so that we can keep the code up to date with current FEMA requirements. The first update that we're proposing is to update the critical facility definition within the City of Tucson floodplain ordinance. This is to clarify the minimum elevation of critical facilities within the city. It's a bit of a change in the elevation requirement compared to the current standard. However, it's minimum language that we need to be providing. The second change is to add the definition of a levee into our floodplain ordinance. We currently don't have levee defined. As Elizabeth mentioned, we're proposing a levee maintenance manual. So the definition and use and functionality of the levee is being included in the floodplain ordinance to match the proposed levee manual. The third change is to add a definition of what are referred to as repetitive loss properties. This is something that requires clarification from time to time and is not currently in our definition section, but is being added. Change number 4 is an update to a retention basin definition to match our proposed updates with the Pima County Stormwater Detention Retention Manual. Change number 5 is to update the list of equipment that needs to be elevated during new construction. We're adding some additional specifications to make sure that the equipment elevations for new construction are being met. Elizabeth, can you change to the next slide? I believe that's the floodplain or the erosion hazard setback. Sorry. Okay. We are also updating our minimum standards for erosion hazard setbacks. Erosion hazard setbacks are in place in order to ensure that there's no loss of property or property is not placed in jeopardy during a flood event. Our floodplain ordinance specifies certain minimum erosion hazard setbacks, and these modifications are targeted towards the minimum setbacks for our major regional water courses within the City of Tucson. So that's the Rito, the Santa Cruz, and the Pantano. So we are proposing to update the minimum erosion hazard setback based on increased flow values in the rivers since the original ordinance was written. So updating that based on current flow values within those rivers. And the second is to remove the option of decreasing the erosion hazard setback for the regional water courses in the City of Tucson, and removing that as an option and placing that in the variance section of the Tucson City Code. So it's a increase in the stringency of those standards, which we feel is important to protect property. Let's see here. Okay, so this slide, sorry, next slide, Elizabeth. So as I mentioned, so this is going to be shifting the design requirements for erosion hazard setback to be a variance as stated in the city code. And this is a recap of the updates I provided earlier. So definition of repetitive loss property, definition of levy, and the freeboard of certain utilities, and increasing that definition. There are 3 additional updates to this. One of them is to remove the developed area or density thresholds for new development for detention and retention, and have those requirements be stated in the stormwater detention retention manual, which is where the design requirements for those types of systems are found. And then the other change is to add to the variance section a line of minimum requirements that would have to be met in order to reduce an erosion hazard setback. And the final change that we're proposing is a notification process for amendments or variances to the code that have to follow a notification process from the department directors through what we have as a stormwater advisory committee. And so we're proposing updating some of the regulatory language on how that advisory committee is being convened. So with that, that's a very quick run through of the proposed changes. And I believe that that's the end of my slides, Elizabeth. And so with that, I would like to introduce Peter McLaughlin, who will start discussing the floodplain management plan updates.
Thank you, John. I'm Peter McLaughlin with the entitlement section of Planning and Development Services. And I'll start with a little background, which might be especially helpful for those of you who are not involved in the floodplain management plan process 4 years ago. The 4-year anniversary of the adoption of the floodplain management plan was actually last week. The mayor and council adopted the FMP on August 9th of 2016. So just a little over 4 years ago. And it's essentially phase 5 of the Tucson stormwater management study. The floodplain management plan is updated on an annual basis and with a formal review and update to take place every 5 years. So keep in mind that this is an update to the floodplain management plan. Last year, the Floodplain Management Plan Committee determined that the formal update would take place in 2020. So that's actually a little ahead of the 5-year schedule, but these days you want to get things done. So that's why we're moving on it in 2020. There were 5 stakeholder meetings held earlier this year in the spring and summer of 2020. And the first meeting was actually live, and subsequent meetings were held virtually, of course, as we're doing here now today. At the first meeting, the actual face-to-face meeting, there was a poll taken, and the outcome was that we would focus on revisions or updates to the action item list in the floodplain management plan. And today we're holding our first of the 2 final meetings prior to taking this to adoption in September. September 22nd is the scheduled mayor and council meeting date for the update adoption. So that's just a little over a month away. So today and tomorrow will be the final of the 2 meetings for input and a chance to have access to the update and revision with feedback prior to the projected readoption scheduled on September 22nd. So in the update, some newly identified flood hazard focus of concerns are listed here, with watercourse maintenance, riparian floodplain tree canopy, floodplain and erosion hazard, management sustainability, and that is equally deserving of a check mark, as the others have. Homelessness and city watercourse. Or maybe that's all one. Floodplain and erosion hazard management sustainability. No. Yes. Anyway, homelessness in city watercourses and post-fire risk following the Bighorn fire and any future fires that may occur in surrounding areas of Tucson. So there are 7 vulnerabilities as were adopted with the floodplain management plan 4 years ago. And these have been taken a relook by the stakeholders at these meetings to determine if there was a change in prioritization. And the 7 existing vulnerability categories are public infrastructure conveyance, flood areas with utilities, municipal structures, urban high-density flood areas, private drainage infrastructure, natural floodplains, vegetated associated flood hazards, and geomorphological flood hazards. And I'll now, I guess that was my last slide. Is that right, Elizabeth? Yes. I think you're muted, Elizabeth.
Sorry about that. I'm here. Yeah, so the floodplain management plan committee discussed primarily the action items in the plan. In our last year annual meeting, it was decided that this was going to be the focus of the Tucson floodplain management plan update. The action items, we started going over those in our committee meetings, and we ended up having feedback sent in on the 7 categories, and many of the proposals for the amendments and changes are incorporated. Each of the action items were considered for either a change or to continue the action item. If the action item is still a good item, doesn't need amending, but we wanted to continue the project or the action item. And then we also had amendments to some of these action items. And then some of the items were considered completed. The plan itself provides a path forward for the city to the mayor and council to direct our flood and erosion hazard management in the city. It also identifies key projects and studies that should be prioritized for flood mitigation and for other action items. And it also helps for this property owners in the city to understand our unique characteristics of floodplain and erosion hazards. I'm now going to turn it over to Craig Saltzman, who's going to go over our new levee maintenance manual.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Some watercourses within the city of Tucson have protection from jurisdictional 100-year flood. Some bank protection improvements were built to the 50-year storm event condition, which may not contain the jurisdictional 100-year flood. Some watercourses, especially regional watercourses, have levee structures that are like elevated berms protecting the land behind it from the 100-year flood. Classic levees are constructed with soil cement or concrete covered earthen material to create a berm to keep floodwaters from inundating an area during a jurisdictional flood event. The Tucson Levee Manual provides maintenance procedures for existing levees within the city of Tucson. The primary purpose of this manual is for maintenance, although it was created to comply with FEMA levee regulations and guidelines and provide requirements and procedures for levee inspection, levee inventory, levee design, and levee survey, specifically for levees within the city of Tucson. The levee manual document will be presented to the City of Tucson Mayor and Council, who acts as the city's floodplain board for their consideration and adoption. We anticipate approval of this document. City staff developed this document based on Army Corps of Engineer levee inspection procedures and with consideration of the Pima County Regional Flood Control District levee checklist. Any questions can be directed to me or the city floodplain administrator at this presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce Patrick Hartley, Transportation Program Coordinator, and he will be presenting Move Tucson.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us to learn about the plan update. And I'm going to give you a brief update on where we are with the Move Tucson planning process. So for those of you who may be unaware, Move Tucson and this is the city's currently under development 20-year master transportation plan. And we're about halfway through the process right now. We have wrapped up the first phase of public engagement as of August 7th of this year, and I'm pleased to announce that we received about 4,500 surveys through that process and garnered roughly 800 individual project ideas from the public. As we've closed phase one, now what we're doing is really analyzing those results and using that input to develop a project list that we're going to be bringing back to the public. Now, as we develop projects, we've got a couple things in mind that we're looking at. The first is we want to make sure that we're working with the Regional Transportation Authority, and we are on track to ultimately submit a project list to the RTA by November 30th of this year. As we go through this project development process for Move Tucson, one of the things that we're going to keep in mind is looking at how we can maximize the benefits for our transportation mobility improvements and how they really integrate with floodplain management, looking at making sure that we're recognizing the drainage needs of the individual projects and incorporating the appropriate project scopes as we develop them so that we can understand the full cost of the projects and make sure that we are maximizing the benefits of those investments. We will be looking at sharing that initial draft project list out publicly, probably in October or November of this year. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll continue to work with the floodplain administrator to make sure that we are coordinating with this process to ensure that our transportation investments are aligning with our floodplain management needs. If you'd like more information about the Move Tucson process, please visit movetucson.org. We'll be updating the website shortly to share the results from the phase one public engagement. With that, I think we're going to be opening up to questions and comments, and I would like to turn it back to Elizabeth, who can field those. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hi, this is Elizabeth again. We are going to go ahead and see if anybody has any questions. You can type your questions in the question and answer box on your right. If you have questions while you're calling in on the phone, you can text your questions to 520-338-8515. We'll wait a minute here to see if some questions come in. In the meantime, I'd like to go over a couple of dates scheduled for these documents. these documents, the floodplain management plan update, the Tucson levy manual, and the Tucson flood and erosion hazard management codes are all being provided to the Mayor and Council September 22nd. Tentatively, we've scheduled that date. We'd like anybody to provide comments to the city by this Friday, August 21st. We've had the scheduled meetings, and now we're wrapping up the drafts. Those drafts will be made available soon, and you'll see them eventually on our website, the final drafts. The website information is provided to you, I believe, in the chat box. If you go to the right of the screen, you should see some information there. Let's see. Anybody have any questions? You're always welcome to email the City of Tucson at tucsonfloodinerosioninfo@tucsonaz.gov, and you can post your questions through the email tucsonflooderosioninfo, that's all one word, at tucsonaz.gov. You can also email Peter or myself. I believe that information will be posted on the chat question and answer box for you. Let's see, does anybody see any questions? Am I missing something here? Is there anyone with the question? Let's see. We had a few people that had joined the public meeting. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead, for those that are still on the meeting here, I'm going to go ahead and show a couple of our slides. There was a YouTube video posted in July. This was after the Bighorn fire, and there was a storm event in the Catalinas, and the debris flow was captured in this video. And I'm going to go ahead and show this to you so you can look at this while you're thinking about some questions that you may want to see. This doesn't have audio. I hope you can see this. This is actual debris flow moving down the CDO. It's in a liquid form as debris is moving through this wash bed. It looks like there's smoke coming out of it, but it is actually dust at the edge of the periphery there that's being pushed up and causing that effect. And you can see a standing wave in the center as the debris moves through with both stormwater runoff and the black charred vegetative debris as it's moving through. So as you can see, this would not be a good place to be trying to cross your vehicle. Let me go back to our presentation. We also have another presentation about, oops, let me just turn on, right back. The Santa Barbara area had a fire and then a flood event that came afterwards. And so this video shows that incident. The photo in front of you is a picture of Sabino Canyon and the boulders that had come down during the 2006 storm event. and that was a post-fire condition, I think, with debris flow running along some of the channels along the sides of the Catalina mountain side there. And so let me try to open this one up. Oops. Okay. So those are our two videos, and I'm hoping that you guys were able to see that. We're going to go ahead and take a half a minute here to see if there's any other questions, and then we're going to go ahead and stop the meeting. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so if you would like to post questions, or if you have comments, or if you'd like to say you like the presentation, or you're in favor of the updates, or if you'd like to ask a question about post-fire conditions, or if you have other flood questions, you're always welcome to contact the City of Tucson at Tucson Flood Erosion Info at tucsonaz.gov, or you can always email us. And I appreciate your time and your input for our floodplain management plan updates. Have a good evening.